Chapter 7. The Tablet as Development of Identity. Just like how the pattern of the golden ratio stabilizes and repeats when it reaches the number 13, so do the layers of meaning hidden within the tablet of Shamash. On the next pass through the tablet, Shamash represents how one's identity develops. This chapter is inspired by John Bradshaw's On Homecoming lecture series. It is the briefest overview possible of that information. This will only deal with one aspect of that system. It deals with how childhood trauma influences the development of self. That system has many levels and layers of sophistication, each of which shows how traits are developed based on your response to trauma.
You have whole families that are in this obedience without content. Whole groups of people that are dominated by obedience without content. This is very dangerous. It is enormously dangerous.
Here we will be focusing specifically on the development of the bully personality. It is the one aspect the tablet of Shamash is attempting to illustrate and warn about. The Bradshaw On Homecoming program is essential viewing for every individual who plans to grow. Every person born into every culture is fundamentally damaged by that culture. If the true nature of the individual is contrary to the beliefs of that culture, as soon as the community standard begins molding the child, they are forced to either suppress or repress the needs of their authentic self. Every culture that represses women must also suppress the feminine aspect of self within men. As a result, those cultures quickly get reduced into a screaming, chest-beating, male-dominant, base animal state. With this comes a perpetual state of imbalance. Shamash's greatest warning is that when genuine calamity strikes, every capable, able-bodied person, based on ability, not gender, will be required to overcome it. To not accept this is a testament to mass cultural delusion and madness. All cultures, in essence, shame people into submission. When this shaming is done in the home, the individual is raised in a feedback loop of shame that has been created through generations of repeated behavior. When it is done through the educational system, it is an unintended consequence of the need to process all children identically so that a functional society can be maintained. There are two kinds of shame. The first is healthy shame. It is based on one's own modesty, which is the way an individual finds and sets their limits. The second is toxic shame based on the projections of the views and beliefs of both the parents and the culture the individual is raised in. When a conflict happens between the natural emotional limit of the child and the family system raising them, one of two types of neurosis get manifested. They are the repressed child and the suppressed child. These two neuroses wound the child and forever remain at the core of the individual. As they grow, these people become and remain children in adult bodies. These adult children remain trapped until they are finally set free. This only happens once the individual gives themselves permission to rediscover and express their authentic self. The repressed child is the result of the system's inability to acknowledge the uncomfortable realities of life that children are curious about. These children are shamed for looking into things parents and teachers are themselves not comfortable dealing with. The suppressed child is the result of the system's inability to keep up with the potential of the child. These children are shamed or made to feel like they are less to keep them contained. It is important to note that this is rarely consciously done. Until one becomes aware, people can only react to a given situation based on their individual family programming, the nature of which most people don't even think about. Shamash has two little confined people holding him up. We are all half of our mother and half of our father. One of these little people represents the feminine aspect of self, the other is the masculine. The one facing right is the repressed self. They are scratching to try and escape. The one facing left is the suppressed self. Their shoulder is trying to hold everything up. People who have become toxically shame-based do not know how to set limits, because the limits their healthy shame attempted to establish were not regarded as valid. In order to avoid dealing with the constant pain of the underdeveloped inner child, the individual seeks mood-altering distractions to numb and block out the shameful self-image that has developed. This desire to alter one's mood is the source of most addictions to food, alcohol, drugs, sex, entertainment, work, and control. In a culture that constantly projects ideals that the average person can never measure up to, individuals get shamed into developing either a fiercely competitive mindset or a total aversion toward all types of competition. The loss of interest in healthy competition is profoundly destructive to the building of the system. The obsession with competition eventually smothers the system once there is no one left to compete with.
The entire purpose of Ohm's wheels of life as the first principle is to demonstrate through examples the cause-effect-result relationship between the variables of resistance, current, and potential difference. The previous result becomes the next cause as you shift phases and move through the system. Once in the new phase, how the variables interact changes based on the rules of that phase. That changing of rules triggers a corresponding change in the experience you are having. All experience is in fact a reflection of energy law and your interaction with it. The wheels of life are made up of two circles. The first circle contains the resistance and potential difference phases. The second circle contains the current or action phase. All increasing of potential, which is growth, happens in the second wheel. To make this easier to visualize how this applies to Ohm's wheels of life, we must temporarily flip the tablet of Shamash. Shamash and the two wounded inner children are isolated in their own space or loop. People who have been toxically shamed have great difficulty leaving the first wheel of life. That is because their core identity has formed around the role they play within the family system. In our first example, if resistance is constant and the effect is seen as a decrease in the current, the result will be a corresponding downturn in potential difference. In the beginning, shame is a natural, physical response. We see an obstacle that makes us spiritually uncomfortable, so we try to avoid that circumstance again. Having the body paralyzed by healthy shame is not bad, as long as those around you respect the limit that you naturally have. However, when you encounter resistance in the form of shaming, if current, your ability to move, decreases, which all children experience because they are dependent, the result is that potential difference also goes down. That is why prolonged exposure to toxic shame affects our confidence. In our second example, if resistance is constant and the effect is seen as a decrease in the potential difference, the result will be a corresponding decrease in current or activity. When you encounter resistance in the form of shame, if for whatever reason potential difference decreases, current or movement also goes down. If you are constantly shamed for the questions you ask, which is a reflection of how your authentic self thinks, you start to believe that your natural thoughts are wrong. If this consistently happens, you will eventually suppress those thoughts and stop acting upon them. When this occurs, you stop performing at the frequency you were naturally born at. As we move into the upper level of the resistance phase, once again the variable that the effect is felt in determines the nature of the result. When faced with a resistance or an environment that is constantly shame-based, the more potential you have, the more energy you can focus on resolving the circumstance. The one thing children have is a lot of energy. When something you find shameful is being done to you and you have the ability to move, your body shifts gears up to the current phase. All factors other than polarity being equal, unless being utilized, energy will always flow through the path of least resistance. This means that your first instinctual response is to get away, hide from or avoid the person who is making you feel uncomfortable. This is the nature of the flight portion of fight or flight. If the action you take is to run and find a good hiding place, the effect will be that the person violating leaves you alone because they can't find you. You survive the encounter, but you do not grow as a result. That is because there is no increase of potential in this course of action. Avoiding the problem through mood-altering addictions always leads back to the original circumstance. This is the nature of codependency because your own potential never gets established. You are shaken by the event, but are relieved when the pressure of the circumstance goes down. You must determine if you are fleeing the physical resistance of the circumstance or the mental pressure required to overcome it. The less pressure you can tolerate, the fewer resistive circumstances you seek out. This can quickly develop into a lifelong habit of trying to avoid problems. Children, as dependents, have no choice but to return to the offender. This lack of establishing potential creates an identity that believes they are powerless. In both of these first examples, either by available energy or greater potential from birth, these people are higher on the scale than those who do not leave the negative aspect of the resistance phase. When living in a constant high-resistance, shame-based environment, the more your energy is inspired to flow, the more ways your potential will seek and find to do so. This is the nature of subconscious emotional response. A violation forces you to act, but instead of trying to get away from it, you engage it. When you charge into situations, you engage with only the potential you were born with. In this circumstance, you switch gears to the potential difference phase. Once in the potential constant reality, there are 4 possible outcomes. Outcome 1. The emotional outburst of energy you threw at the problem cannot be increased or maintained to a level that is greater than the resistance. A tantrum, tears, or kicking and screaming does not move the problem. The resistance is superior to you at your present level of physical and emotional development. You do not have the ability to stay focused long enough to overcome the problem because it is increasingly more sophisticated than you anticipated. This particular resistance, obstacle, or problem will always win every time you encounter it unless you mentally grow by developing new ways to engage it. Outcome 2. The effect of the emotional outburst energy you threw at the problem only increases the intensity of the resistance you have encountered. Your tantrum, tears, or kicking and screaming have not only failed to overcome it, it has created an even harsher circumstance. As a result, you stop emotionally lashing out because it, as a tactic, was counterproductive or ineffective. The resistance is not only superior to you in your present state, it is fighting back as a result of your actions. When this occurs, your focus shifts from the problem to escape. You switch gears to the instinctual flight phase in an attempt to retreat from the resistance so you can avoid being crushed by it. Outcome 3. You keep increasing the emotional outburst of energy you are projecting at the problem until it is greater than the resistance. It took the increasing of your focused energy, but your tantrum, tears, or kicking and screaming worked. As a result, the resistance bowed to the will of your sheer emotion-driven attack. When this tactic for dealing with obstacles succeeds, it gets reinforced as an acceptable way of dealing with problems. This is the first step down the path toward a sense of entitlement. Outcome 4. The emotional outburst energy causes the resistance to immediately bow to your will. A tantrum, tears, kicking and screaming instantaneously dissolve the problem. If your actions are never questioned, you are left with increased available energy to do whatever you want with. This is the first step toward egomania. When one throws themselves emotionally into circumstances and succeeds, they develop the mentality that they are superior to everything and everyone. These people develop the habit of charging into or bullying their way through problems as their default tactic of engagement. This brings us back to Shamash. In this phase, he represents the nature of a bully. He has never left the first wheel. He is both repressed rage and suppressed shame. His toxic shame-based personality is fundamentally insecure at its core. He does not know what healthy growth is. He knows no limits because he has always lashed out to get what he wants and gotten away with it. He is bigger than everyone else because he is a full-blown megalomaniac. Shamash in this form is living in his own little bubble. He has created a circuit to sustain himself physically, but in reality he has built a prison cell that he is hiding in. He has done this so he does not have to deal with the complex emotionality of interacting with life. This whole system of identity molding creates many types of fundamentally damaged people. The two that the tablet of Shamash is dealing with are the bully and his codependent. Both of these personality types have had their potential locked or frozen in time because it was either suppressed or repressed by the environment they were raised in. People who do not set limits and push constantly until they get what they want are typically very successful in the physical realm. They know how to throw their weight around and intimidate to get what they want. Most people successful in business are this personality type. However, the majority of them have little to no diversity of perception. They only see the world their way. They care not for others' feelings or needs. Their minds are closed because they are too afraid to venture outside their bubble. No person can operate without social interaction to feed the needs of the wounded child at their core. These people will always find yes people to surround themselves with. These yes people have come to believe in their own powerlessness because of all the shaming they have been subjected to. Shamash projects strength. The smallest person, his codependent, has a bent spine. He has no backbone, which means he is easily bullied. He lacks the confidence to stand up straight. Every bully needs someone to abuse, or their identity will collapse. The codependent's entire identity has formed around accepting their role as victim. The shame they were raised with becomes the foundation of a feedback loop. Whenever they find themselves within the sphere of an abuser, they stay even after everyone else has abandoned the circuit the abuser created. They remain because they never learned self-worth. If this is you, there is hope. That hope is learning, accepting, and doing exactly what Ohm's wheels of life require of you. The tablet of Shamash, and the law is a perfect reflection of the resistance phase of Ohm's wheels of life. At this level, Shamash represents a severely damaged adult child. One whose damaged inner child is still determining the outcome. Are you willing to do all the hard work and heavy lifting required so that your potential can increase? Until you accept this as a requirement made by the physics of life, you will never know true freedom. This is true of both the bully and the codependent identity types. How do we know this is the truth? At this level of interpretation, each of the three people are the same person going through the process of standing upright. The first thing that must expand is your headdress or mentality. This can only be done by educating yourself with information that will never be taught in school. Those who are not willing to do this type of heavy mental lifting remain codependent to others. They will remain, keeping the bully just stable enough to function until they are finally discarded. The bully who is not willing to do this mental work spends their whole life torturing others. Without a functional model to escape from themselves, eventually they become so isolated that they only have themselves to torture, punish, and torment.
The only way out is through. In both cases, each person is out of balance and must correct this by engaging, overcoming, and getting in harmony with the factors that created their identity. It is for this reason that you must take the time to study yourself. It is only in the second wheel of life that true growth occurs. If current or intensity of focused energy is constant and resistance increases, potential must also increase. All of life is resistance training in different forms. It is only through the overcoming of physical, mental, and spiritual resistance that a greater potential version of you gets established. The hardest aspect of self-improvement is the development of discipline. The reason this is so hard is because toxically shamed people do not know how to establish limits. They have never developed the ability to either say no or accept no from others. They often want it all and more. They feel justified in saying or doing whatever it takes to get what the wounded child within wants. Toxic environments assign people roles that become anchors for the development of a healthy identity. Without the fulfillment of their assigned role, what purpose does the individual have? The bad things that happen to you either crush you into your highest form or become the reason for growth to occur. The only control you have is how you react to your circumstance. Bad things happen to everyone all the time. Everyone is always struggling with something, regardless of the persona they project. The circumstance of life dictates that every person must sustain their physical livelihood. This is done through the transferring of kinetic energy through production into currency, so that one can buy the things they need to survive. It is up to you to make the best of your bad situation. The way you do this is to learn as much as you can from the struggle you are facing so you can overcome it. The more you learn, the more confidence you will have. This process forces you to stand ever straighter until you become your own little master. If you're struggling with repressed or suppressed feelings, they are the thing holding you back, not the bully. There are only two options to proceed. Will you focus your energy on avoiding the difficult feelings inside by continuing to distract yourself through whichever compulsive behavior you have established as a coping mechanism? Or will you do the heavy lifting and begin to deal with the complex emotions that are keeping you trapped in the box within yourself? Sometimes, because of our trauma, the bully holding us back is actually ourself. Are you punishing yourself or beating yourself up for having feelings we were never allowed to express? The only way out is through. In order to overcome the pain, you must embrace the pain. To do this, you must observe, take responsibility for, and work your way through all the resistance that created your wounded inner child. As soon as you do this, you will be able to turn and walk away, not run or flee, from the toxic environment you feel beholden to. The day you finally reach your limit, a switch in your brain gets flipped. With the finding of your limit, you will inherit the stability of mind to know that you have established the potential required to restart life on a clean slate. All life follows energy law by default. That is why it is the first principle. It is the reason a chipmunk finds food and hoards it without thought. It is also the reason a tree's roots naturally avoid rock and grow through the richest soil available. What will this new life of yours look like? There are two choices. You either follow the path of least resistance into another circumstance that will most likely have been established by a carbon copy of the bully you just escaped, or you will be required to master entrepreneurship. The second option is the only one that truly allows the individual to experience true freedom and the costs that come with it. As terrifying as this prospect is for most people, rest assured, the process for establishing a successful entrepreneurial venture also follows the exact pattern of the first principle, just as the tablet of Shamash predicts. This chapter has used revised page examples from the book Ohm's Law of Life, The Terms and Conditions of Existence. They have been applied to the work of John Bradshaw. This has been done to show more clearly the why behind his groundbreaking work. It is advised by the creator of this work that every person should take the time to explore his two series, Bradshaw on the Family and Bradshaw on Homecoming. Until you better understand the nature and variety of trauma that you may be struggling with, proceeding beyond this point will get increasingly difficult to accept.